Empty-handed I entered the world. Barefoot I leave it. My coming, my going, two simple happenings that got entangled. Kozan Ichikyo. Hidden in the Rising Star cave system about 30 miles northwest of Johannesburg, South Africa, was the believed gravesite of humanity's ancestors, the Homo naledi. They were thought to have lived between 250,000 and 500,000 years ago, and their remains were deliberately left in a chamber of a cave. And there was evidence that they were distinctly buried there. Traces of ancient artwork were carved into the walls to mark their final resting place. Honoring the dead is as instinctual to us as the grief that comes with it. But how do we remember those who have passed on? Rites, funerals, wakes. These traditions followed humankind from the very beginning. As the land contracted, expanded, and pulled apart, burgeoning cultures evolved in a variety of ways. With that, how we practice our final farewells and how we choose to remember those who've left us. From modest stone towers to headstones next to unrung bells, to modern practices, let's explore how these rites are performed in the modern day. It is well known that in Western culture, it is traditional to wear simple black clothes to a funeral. It's believed that this tradition came from ancient Roman culture, where the grieving would don black togas called toga pullas, though the practice was also popularized in Victorian-era England as the people of the highest social strata would wear black outfits special for funerals. As black dye was expensive, wearing black outfits would delineate who was of a high pedigree. The tradition of wearing black to a funeral in Eurocentric cultures took root and spread. While black is traditional in some parts of the world, white is traditional for others, specifically in Asian countries such as China, Philippines, Korea, and Japan. White symbolizes purity, regeneration, and grieving. Mourners aren't the only ones who must be careful with how they dress. The deceased should also be prepared and dressed appropriately before any wake or funeral can begin. Embalming is the treatment of a dead body with chemicals, fluids, or gases to prevent decay or to preserve it for medical reasons. It is one of the oldest arts of humanity, dating as far back as 5,000 to 6,000 BCE from the Chinchorro culture in the Atacama Desert, in what is now modern-day Peru and Chile. Though the practice was also prevalent in many other cultures as well, Egyptian priests would prepare the body by removing the organs and ridding the body of moisture with salt. The remains of Lady Di from Han Dynasty China have been extraordinarily preserved through unknown techniques. And in the European Renaissance, scientific advancements called for better preservation of bodies, so embalming techniques were honed by figures such as Alessandro Giuliani, Leonardo da Vinci, and Bartholomew Eustachius. Modern-day embalming involves the injection of various chemicals into the arterial network to disinfect and slow down the process of decay. Then the embalmer applies makeup to the face of the deceased, applying light moisturizer and foundation, with lipstick to best match their natural lip color. Most practices make the deceased look as relaxed and natural as possible. As for dressing up, in many cases the deceased might have many of their final wishes already set, including what outfit to be buried in. Though if not, it's often the next of kin's responsibility to choose. In some cultures, including the Jewish and Muslim faith traditions, the deceased are not embalmed, but their bodies washed and wrapped in a simple shroud before burial, traditionally a day after death. Muslim and Jewish grieving rituals involve a period of mourning when the family gathers for prayer, food, sharing memories, and comfort. With the guests invited and the body prepared, how do we take care of the body? When we think about funerals, we often think about the image of a coffin being lowered to the ground. After all, even cavemen thought to return their dead to the earth. But what about the sky? Sky burial is a Western term, but Tibetans call it giving alms to the birds. It is a practice where the body is placed on a mountaintop to decompose, while being exposed to the elements or to be eaten by scavenging animals. This funerary tradition is practiced in regions such as Tibet, Mongolia, and Sikkim, where Vajrayana Buddhism is the most prevalent. The religion teaches the transmigration of spirits and does not see a need to preserve the body, seeing it as an empty vessel after death. The purpose of a sky burial, of allowing nature to consume the body, is to be as generous as possible, giving back to nature as nature has provided for the deceased. Additionally, due to the rocky earth and scarcity of timber in Tibet, giving alms to the birds is much more practical than cremation or burials. To the sky in Tibet, but in Bali, Indonesia, a ngaben occurs. Smoke billows up to the sky from a roaring fire, and the loved ones gather around to watch their ancestor move on to the next realm. A ngaben is a Hindu cremation ceremony in Bali, Indonesia. The family has made a coffin shaped like a bull or mythical animal crafted from bamboo, wood, and paper. A variation of this coffin would be a wooden wada, a structure resembling a temple. While the fire consumes the structure and the spirit is brought to its next rebirth, music plays a battle song symbolizing the soul's fight with the underworld as they battle to a higher realm. A war song plays in Indonesia, but jazz follows the procession in New Orleans, Louisiana, in the United States. Known as a New Orleans goodbye, music is the lifeblood that is carried through the streets as the friends, family, and a brass band march from the home, funeral, church, to the cemetery. This practice is a blend of European and African cultural influences, military-style brass bands melding together with the spirituality of the Yoruba tribe. Mournful and somber dirges follow the procession as the coffin is carried. But as the body is laid to rest, the music becomes more upbeat. It swells with songs like When the Saints Come Marching In and The Grieving Dance, a celebration of life as much as it is a period of grief and mourning. Dia de los Muertos, or the Day of the Dead, is a holiday celebrated on either November 1st or 2nd, depending on the local culture. Dancing, music, and food are thought to rouse the dead from their sleep and reconnect them to their family for a night, a time of lights, joy, and bright colors. Altars dedicated to ancestors are decorated with flowers and bright banners. Offerings such as their favorite foods, drinks, and prayers are placed on the altar. Graves are not only cleaned, but decorated with bundles of marigolds. The strong fragrance of these flowers is thought to help guide the souls from their cemeteries to their family homes. Variations of the Day of the Dead do not reside only in Mexico, but also in Italy, Philippines, and the Czech Republic. In early April, 15 days after the spring equinox, there is a soft chorus of sweeping collected in the cemetery in remembrance of the Qingming festival. Gates are protected by willow branches as families en masse visit the tombs of their ancestors to clean the site and provide offerings for them to enjoy the afterlife. A family will burn offerings such as joss paper or spirit money and paper sculptures of cars, houses, and servants. The Chinese belief is that the deceased can still use their material wealth in the afterlife. And after the offerings have been burned and the prayers made, the family will eat the food they brought. The rest of the day is spent with family, flying kites, singing, and dancing. Variations of the Qingming festival are also celebrated in areas like Vietnam, Singapore, and South Korea. As the sun rises on an auspicious day determined by a local Malagasy astrologer, a tomb is exhumed in Madagascar. The body is unwrapped, rewrapped, and drenched in perfume before it is danced with to celebrate Famarihana, a time to spend with your loved ones, both living and deceased. The holiday began in the 17th century after a mass repatriation of soldiers' bodies were returned to the Malagasy as a tradition of burying the body a second time. Famadihana translates to the turning of bones. When the body is rewrapped, their names are written on silk cloth, and the family will lift the deceased over their heads and dance to live music. And just before the sun sets, the bodies are gently returned to their stone tomb in their new clothes until another 5 or 7 years have passed. Funerals are for the living. If we have not done for the dead while they were yet in flesh, it is too late. Let the matter pass at the grave. Day by day, we should live for those who are to die, and live so that we may die for those who are to live. Funerals are for the living. Death is the inevitable conclusion that all living things come to. Plants, animals, and even the stars go dark, returning to ocean, the earth, and the sky. There is an equator-wide breadth of diverse burial practices all over the world, sometimes with music, or sometimes in hands pulling weeds from the headstones, in the flying kites, the marigolds, in silk, to the birds in a pyre or in a coffin, we grieve. Though, more importantly, we celebrate the life that was lived. Loved ones are brought together by the comfort of final farewells. It is a bittersweet and profoundly human tradition to memorialize the care and love the deceased have inherited. A candle is lit in memory of someone's warmth that had gone cold. The way it is lit is many and beautiful. As the flame travels down the wick until the candle is all but a puddle of wax, we remember and we love.